Others are also forging ahead with programming that can feel very newly relevant. Take Ellen Page's new documentary, There's Something in the Water. She just spoke to the Washington Post and mentioned how it is hard not to think about this pandemic and consider the wider impact of environmental racism, something that is documented in this new project. And tonight, for something a little different, we are joined by the Oscar-nominated actor, activist, producer, and now first-time director, Ellen Page. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Ellen, you are known to many people for many things, starting with your role as fundamentally an artist, someone who has followers. You have people who are interested in what you have to say. I'm just curious, before we get into this project, how you're thinking about culture in the time of this pandemic and so many people looking for ways to connect and commune.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like always those of us with privilege, those of us with a platform, it's crucial for us to use that in terms of sharing information, spreading awareness, talking about issues that potentially aren't necessarily being highlighted enough or elevated enough. And, right now, like you said, a lot's being highlighted in terms of issues, in terms of inequality that are always creating consequences for so many people in our society. And I think it's important to, continue that conversation.
Yeah, so let's get into that conversation then. When we talk about terms like environmental justice or how the environment affects people's public health, what got you involved in this project, which is brand new and now this weekend out on Netflix? What drew you to it? What should we know if we're going to take a look at it?
Sure. Well, I'm born and raised in Nova Scotia. And when I started learning more about the degree of environmental racism in Nova Scotia, I was horrified and at my own lack of awareness, quite frankly. So I wanted to educate more as, my responsibility. And I happened to read Dr. Ingrid Waldron's groundbreaking book, There's Something in the Water. This film was inspired by. She's a producer on the film. And I felt it was crucial to do whatever I could to help elevate her work and the voices of those who have been working so hard, the water protectors and activists. And essentially reached out to Ingrid and we started brainstorming ideas of how we could work together. And I don't think either of us expected to be here with this film, but here we are. And just, environmental racism in general, for maybe those who aren't aware, it is about the disproportionate placement of landfills, hazardous industry, et cetera, next to Indigenous and Black communities and other marginalized communities.
And that brings us to the overlap here. What is on your mind launching a project about this issue when we see the pandemic, definitely throughout the world, but also in the United States, hits people differently, and it has hit the poor so hard, one, with the healthcare problems that are well documented in the country, and two, people who are on the margins or poorer or subject to week-to-week jobs, losing their jobs even if they didn't themselves get the virus.
Yes, and, environmental racism does intersect with a lot of this conversation. Right now I'm thinking about Indigenous and Black communities that do not have access to clean water. So when we're told to wash our hands is one of the most important things to do right now, that's very difficult in those communities. Or I think of these communities that, because they're so close to hazardous industry, do have higher rates of respiratory issues, cancer rates. And as we know, that makes people more susceptible to the horrific consequences of this virus. So it's similar to these issues in terms of, yes, marginalized communities being disproportionately affected.
And what made you want to do something like this that, of course, people have many different layers and elements to them, but folks know you from your fictional work. What made you want to go in this direction?
Well, again, I think those of us with privilege and a platform. I think we must use it, as we are talking right now about the degree of inequality in this country and Canada, all around the world. And I think it's crucial, quite frankly. And after making the show with my co-director on this film, Ian Daniel, a show we made called Gaycation, exploring LGBTQ cultures around the world, I think in terms of being more behind the camera, I am just very interested in nonfiction. And again, when I started learning about these issues, it just felt very important to help elevate these voices who have just been, these women who have been doing extraordinary work and needed to be heard more. I mean, they're the
100%.
Film, quite frankly.
And since it's on Netflix, Ellen, I'd like to end with a goofy question, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Should people watch There's Something in the Water on Netflix before Tiger King?
Well, I think so, but
okay.
Perhaps I'm coming from a biased perspective.
No, I mean, it's your position to advocate for. Have you seen Tiger King yet? That's the other hot one on Netflix right now.
No, I haven't seen it quite yet, but
it is. Well, it just launched.
Watching television.
It's brand new, yes. So now I'm revealing to everyone my instincts. The Tiger King is really something. It's beyond words, and There's Something in the Water sounds like a very worthwhile project, both on Netflix. Ellen, I really appreciate you making time to talk to us about this during everything else going on. Thank you very much.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate so much you wanting to talk about the film. So thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.